Hey, Shane,
Yes, Vince?
have you seen Avatar?
The funny thing is, I have, but never in IMAX 3D.
Well, you have now.
Yep, it was my first time seeing it on the big screen.
My first time, I saw it in theaters when it came out, but my first time seeing it in IMAX 3D, the way it was intended.
I think for this momentous occasion, I think that we need to do something special.
I have just the thing. Let's decorate.
Fucking let's do it.
Okay, let's do this. Okay. We probably should have done this before.
We probably should have planned on this, but we didn't really.
Oh god, my cord. Okay.
Okay. Oh fuck. Oh shit. Oh shit, it's not sticking.
Oh god, no!
This isn't working.
No, it's okay. We can do this.
Okay.
Ah!
Okay.
That's gonna fall off in the middle of this.
It's gonna
and
be great.
Can't wait.
It's gonna be great.
Okay. Look, we decorated.
We decorated.
All right. So
Looks amazing.
here's the thing. Podcast now has video. So
Now
if you
on
want to
video.
watch and see that great little bit you just heard, you can do that on YouTube.
Already. All right.
30 seconds. I love this. Okay. If you want to see this great bit
Yes,
now,
it's great already.
It's on YouTube. So
Yeah.
you can do that. Anyway, back to the regular
Yes.
conversation.
Back to actually talking about.
This is our first revisited episode.
Right.
First time we've both seen something and we're going over it again. And we're going over it again because a decade after this has come out,
Yeah.
Avatar: The Way of Water is coming in, this will come out first week in December most likely, and it will come out, the Avatar 2 will come out later in that month of December 2022. And they re-released it in theaters. The new 4K restoration of it in IMAX 3D.
Yep.
You had never seen it in theaters?
Nope.
I had never seen it on IMAX 3D.
Yeah.
So we thought, hey, let's do this, because you and I are both have opinions on this movie. I've gone through a whole roller coaster of changing opinions on it over the years.
Right.
And you are not a fan.
I have been firmly in the camp of I've just been a hater. I mean, like, I'm just gonna put it straight. I have been an Avatar hater for a very long time because I think part of the reason was I didn't go see it in theaters, and so maybe I don't know, maybe there was some FOMO there or something like that of like, oh, I didn't see it in its initial run. The first time I watched this movie was at my parents' house. My parents bought, and you're going to laugh, but my parents bought a 3D TV.
Remember when those were a thing?
Remember when people tried to make those a thing? Sorry, Gretchen. Quit trying to make fetch happen. Quit trying to make 3D TVs happen, Gretchen. So my parents, seven 3D TVs were given to the realms of men, and one of those TVs went to my parents. And so
are they now the Nazgul? What's going on?
Yes, they are the ring wraiths. They are the 3D wraiths. Oh, whatever, doesn't matter. So my parents bought the 3D TV and they bought Avatar. And so my first experience watching Avatar was on their 3D TV. And I was disappointed. I was like, you mean it's just Pocahontas, but blue.
Yes. Dances with wolves, but in space.
But blue
and only
space.
sort of in space, because it's really just a planet. Like,
right.
It just looks like a jungle with a couple. That being said, at night, I think Pandora looks very fun and cool and original. Like, just the glowingness of it all. Like, I like that. I think that's a fun aesthetic.
But, like, is it?
I think so. I think it's
Okay,
an
I
interesting.
think
It's that moment in the movie when she throws his spear in the water.
Yeah.
And he walks out, and all of a sudden, everything just starts glowing. Like, it's a really cool thing. When he walks, it changes on his feet where he's going. When he touches something, I think that is a really fun idea.
But like phosphorescence are on planet Earth. Like, that does exist.
No, I'm not saying it's
like,
not a. I'm not saying it's entirely foreign to whatever.
Right. It's
But I'm just saying
pumped up to like 300.
It's a cool aesthetic.
Right.
Okay, so like the thing about this movie for me, right? I saw this as a kid when it first came out, and I loved it. I thought it was so cool and adventurous and fun. Now, I saw it in theaters. I didn't see it in 3D, obviously, but in theaters. Right. And then over the years, I've watched it and really enjoyed it. Still, for like years, I was super into this movie. I think the third act battle is super fun. I think it looks amazing. Specifically CGI, obviously.
Yeah.
The thing about it is over the years, as I got more and more into movies, it felt less and less original to me. Right. Because that's the thing about this movie, and we're going to talk about that now, I think, before we get into it as a movie on its own. This is not an original movie.
No.
People talk about the idea of it's cool that the highest grossing movie in the era of the comic book freaking IP franchise, multiverse, connected universe era of cinema, everyone talks about how cool it is that the highest grossing movie of all time is not based on an IP. Well, here's the thing. Cameron stole the entire idea of Pandora from someone. He called the art
aesthetic. Yeah.
He stole the aesthetic, and the story is nothing we haven't seen a million times.
Right.
It's just the one twist is it's in space and it's people literally putting their brains in an alien.
Right.
Like that's the only quote unquote original thing about it.
Yeah.
It's Pocahontas, it's Dances with Wolves, it's a bunch of other
Fern Gully.
It's you could fit it into a dozen other things of the hero realizing he's on the wrong side.
Yeah.
That's all this movie is. And he used the, I can't remember the guy's name, but the concept art, I say with heavy quotations there, that James Cameron used for this movie is just stolen artwork. I believe there's a lawsuit going on right now about the fact that he just didn't pay this guy. And if you look at the artwork and look at stills from the movie, it's the same thing.
Right.
And it's very frustrating, especially as a creative person, as a filmmaker. It's like just, let's go ahead and steal.
William Roger Dean, it was the artist. I mean, it's like it is so clear how much inspiration, if you can put in the heaviest of quotation marks, inspiration, about like what makes this movie good and cool is the aesthetic for so many people, and all of that was like just like stolen, just like outright stolen.
And I wouldn't have a problem with him being that inspired by it if he paid the man.
Yeah,
if he brought him on to be a part of it
as a concept artist,
yes,
like all the time.
And that's the ultimate problem with that side of the movie. With everyone calling it, it's so original and unique, and it's not based on anything. Well, a large part of it was very clearly based on something, and that's so frustrating that Cameron is in a lawsuit over this instead of just hiring the man to be a part of it.
Not in a lawsuit. He won. He won
the lawsuit.
Yeah, he won the lawsuit.
Yeah. That is terrible.
Yeah. It's and that's the thing. That has been my like thesis statement for a very long time. Is like nothing about this movie is original. Like nothing is. The technology is not original. The like it's just improved upon. Like all of it has just been improved upon. It's iterated. It's not innovation. It's iteration. And there goes the second.
And there goes my poster. Dang it!
So that's been my thesis statement for a very long time. Of just like, if you want to watch dances, like, and that's been my thing. Is like, I don't think the world is that interesting. I don't think the character design is that interesting. I don't think the creature design is that interesting. It's just horses. They're just horses.
I think some of the creature design is cooler than other creature design. I think they're standouts. I think the dragons they ride are very fun.
But they're just dragons.
I know, but it doesn't mean it's not cool.
Look, but
I agree about the horses.
But what I'm saying is like dragons are cool because dragons are cool. They're not cool in Avatar because they're different. They're cool because they're just dragons, and dragons are cool. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing inspired about Avatar
from a story and design level.
Yes.
The things that are inspired about this movie is the technology used to create it.
But again, that's it. Those were iterations from technology that already existed.
I don't think that matters, though. I think it's the idea of every time there's a new technological leap within filmmaking, just as the example we're going to talk about. The first camera that you had to crank and then somebody went, ooh, okay, now we can just press a button and it will automatically go. It's like, that is still a massive technological leap.
Right.
I think the fact that he took, I mean, that's the thing is you've described this movie as a tech demo.
Yeah, I think it's the most profitable tech demo of all time.
But here's the thing about that. I think that is selling it slightly like short of what it's doing, because it's a very, very entertaining tech demo.
Right.
Like that's right. So the technology, yes, we've had 3D movies, but we've never had a movie that 10 years later is still, people say the definitive way to watch it is in 3D, which I don't agree with, because I don't like 3D period. But the 3D cameras he had built and helped design for this movie, Cameron did, were revolutionary. Now, are they used very much anymore? No. People just post-process 3D, and that's why it's not cool. That's why it hasn't had much of a leap since this movie's been out. And the CGI, obviously, the CGI is impeccable, even for the time. Even today, seeing it again in a theater, it still looks breathtaking.
It still sells really well.
There's very few moments where you're like, that didn't... if any, that fully take me out.
I would say almost none of it fully takes me out. The only time it doesn't sell for me is when you've got a live action character, and it's only sometimes a live action character in a full CG scene. A specific part that jumps to mind is Sigourney Weaver when she's being carried as she's been taken to the tree or whatever.
Yeah,
that doesn't look great, but so much else about this movie does.
Yeah, but you can, and they played after the credits. They played a scene from the new one, and you best believe that none of that's going to be a problem. At least I don't think it will. The technological leap between the first one and the second. Well, the first one was a technological feat from a computer generated graphics standpoint. It was leaps and bounds ahead of everything else at the time. I think this new one is going to be another defining moment in CGI for today.
I don't think to the same degree.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about the same degree.
Looks great. I think other movies that have, things that jump to mind are like Dune or something like that. That movie looks phenomenal.
No. I don't mean to say it's going to be the same, but what I'm saying is there are certain things about it that are revolutionary. Like the water simulation for the new one is supposedly unbelievable. There's a shot in the trailer of somebody's hands, and you and I have discussed for months whether or not it's real or not. It's like a real person or not.
It's too real, man. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't see the reason to pay all that money to do that.
It would be very stupid to shoot one shot of one dude's hand, but I don't know. It looks too real. I don't know.
But that's my point. That's why I think it's going to be arguably it could be the greatest CGI we've ever seen. I think it's in the conversation of being up there. Now, you're right. Dune is another one where Dune, in my opinion, is the best blending of practical and visual effects we've ever seen before.
Right.
I fully agree with. But with Avatar, it's hard for me because I enjoyed this movie and then I fell out of love with it for a good stretch where I just was I kind of fell into a little bit where you still are some, where you're just like, it's not original, it's not cool, why is everyone praising it? It's like, I think there's an argument to be made here. Taking Cameron out of it, you and I are frustrated with him as a person. And
I don't love James Cameron.
We don't need to get into it. He's a great director. That cannot be denied.
Right.
A great director of specifically action and practicality. Working with actors, different conversation. Who knows? He's gotten good performances in his movies, but also he maybe mistreats people. Yeah. I don't know. The thing is, I felt a little, and then seeing it again this way, in theaters again, a decade later, I had the time of my life. I thought it was super fun. There were random moments that jumped out at me where I was like, I didn't expect to feel something. Specifically when he's flying for the first time with her and they're doing that dive bomb together. And in a theater, you can feel it, and the sound mix is so much better in that environment.
Yeah.
It swept me up in it. I got swept up into the world and into the characters and stuff. I am very much someone who gives myself to a movie because I go in wanting to love everything.
Yeah.
I give myself over. And so with this one, in this particular experience, because I watched this earlier in 2022, 4 or 5 months before, because I didn't realize it was going to be re-released. Right. I knew it would, but I didn't think out to this level.
Yeah.
And so I watched it again and felt the way I used to feel, where I was like, this is fine. It's really well directed from a practical standpoint, where it's the camera's never doing these crazy impossible digital moves. It's all it feels very grounded.
Yeah.
The third act battle is really well shot, really fun. It's got good beats. The pacing of the movie for the most part works really well. All of the directing things work about this movie. I think the performances are actually quite good from pretty much everybody. I can't think of anyone I don't like in the movie.
I can't either.
But watching it this time in a theater, there's so much to be said. I'm also somebody who fully believes in that the best way to watch literally any movie is in a movie theater.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an exception to that. I don't have, this is the exception to prove. No, every single movie is better in a movie theater.
No, I think
movie going specific experience aside, because that can also ruin it.
Right. I think this movie, more than almost any other, was only designed to watch in a theater, because I completely agree. I watched this movie for the first time in the theater in IMAX 3D, and it was the first time I've actually enjoyed watching this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny. It's like, I think there is no other way to watch this movie and it be an enjoyable experience. You have to get swept up in the visuals. You have to get swept up in the sound mix. You have to get swept up in all of that kind of stuff, because if not, it's just blue Dances with Wolves. Like when you can't appreciate it to the fullest extent of its visuals, then like so much of the experience is lost. That being said, to track back on something you said earlier is watching this for the first time, I was really caught by how solid the fundamentals are in this movie. Like from a meat and potatoes filmmaking perspective, this movie is rock solid.
Completely.
Like
top to bottom, beginning to end.
I can't take that away from James Cameron in any way, shape, or form. I mean, even including the story. It is rock solid, fundamental filmmaking and storytelling. Like to a point where it's like, it's a little rote, you know, for in terms of like the storytelling, but like the filmmaking is like there's nothing super inspired about the filmmaking, but it's so solid. It lets the thing that is inspired, which are the visuals, take center stage.
Yes.
Like I think that like so often, I mean, we've talked about this before, is like so often I think something that takes me out are shitty digital camera moves that are impossible. There's not a single one. Everything is super shootable with the craziest shots you'll get are helicopters essentially, and it's all super practical, feels grounded and real and possible in terms of like what you can achieve with actual cameras and actual human operators. So like I have to give this movie credit for that I think the like fundamentals, the meat and potatoes fundamentals are rock solid.
Yeah, and so that brings my biggest point, my biggest like corner I turn with it on this experience.
Yeah.
I think so often we talk about film and the movies people like are these really big abstractions of cinema, stuff, everything everywhere all at once, right? Yeah. A 2022 movie that everyone is in love with, rightfully so, because it's incredible.
Right.
But everyone wants to do that. Everyone wants the big, abstract, crazy, original thing. But does a movie have to be original to be good?
No.
And I think that is where so many young filmmakers specifically lose sight of what is to be done. Right. James Cameron made a movie that like on the surface, like outside looking in, feels like a very original movie. If you didn't know he stole stuff for the design, if you had never seen a couple of movies, you wouldn't think, right? But like it isn't an original movie. And you're right, it is so meat and potatoes, it's not exactly quote unquote inspired. But he does them so well that all of the action sequences are thrilling.
Yeah.
Every scene has beats and levels, and like it's immaculate from that perspective.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's good. We talk about action as this crazy one right now, where there's been this bit of a renaissance lately where all these stuntmen have been directing movies.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit with the Fast and Furious, where a lot of stuntmen's attitude is to full send everything. Right. And I think that's an awesome mentality for those types of movies.
Right.
It's super cool. But Cameron knows, he's like, okay, I need to bring it back. Like, I don't need the crazy, insane shot to show something that will just be badass on its own.
Right.
You know, but you also in this movie, the one thing I'll give is you have like characters who their motivations work. All of that stuff makes sense and plays. You know why the Colonel's doing what he's doing. You know why Jake is doing what he's doing. You know why everyone's doing what they're doing.
Right.
And the dynamics between them work too.
Yeah.
It's again that is part of directing. Make no mistake. You can ruin that in an edit.
Yeah.
You can ruin that in a script as a director.
Yeah.
You can. And so Cameron not doing that, hey, there's credit to be given there. It's not all that original.
Right.
But neither is something like John Wick. You know what's original about John Wick? Is that it kicked off a renaissance of action.
Right.
That's what's original about that movie. There were other great, well-shot action movies before John Wick, but John Wick
Name two. No, I'm just kidding.
The Bourne Ultimatum, The Raid Redemption.
Yeah.
The other...
Every movie was Steven Seagal in it.
The Matrix. But the reason John Wick is cool is like the story of that movie, if you break down, is guy gets revenge because he's sad.
Right.
That's what that movie is.
Yeah.
But it's done and shot in a way that we forget that it's not that original.
Right.
Because it feels it. And I get why people get swept up in Pandora and Avatar. I get it. I understand why some of my even film friends are like, I just can't help it. I love it so much. I totally get it. Because when you watch this movie and give yourself to it in the right setting, in a theater setting,
yes,
it sweeps you up. It's hard. You'd have to sit there and not want to enjoy it to fight back on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of like the most important thing about this is, it's not original, but it's still a good movie.
Yeah.
Good, well-made movie that has a couple of like really unfortunate things with Cameron stealing from people and not even being original with his story.
Yeah.
Like that, I won't say the characters are original.
Yeah.
You know, the characters and what they're going through. It's again, Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves.
It's meat and potatoes, solid fundamental storytelling.
And that's maybe what this movie needed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who knows? Would I have liked to see? I don't dislike the character design as much as you do. I think it's fun and plays, right? Because they even describe them at the beginning where they're like humanoid-like figures, which is why they're able to put their DNA and clone them. Like that is that.
It's not the Na'vi that bother me. It's literally everything else.
Okay. Yeah.
Where it's like, I mean, it's just like it's so similar to the world we live in now. I mean, other than like
the floating mountains are the one like
that's like the one thing
supernaturally
and that was so stolen.
Oh yeah,
like,
completely.
Like the only original pieces were things that he stole from another artist, and that's the thing that frustrates me. That's why I'm so like it's like the horses are horses, the dragons are dragons, the tigers are black instead of stripes. There's like
the panther has 6 legs.
It's like they're all. There is a very immediate analog to the Earth that we live on now, including all the flora and fauna combined. There's an Earth analog to all of it.
I think
there's just like some color swaps.
Yes, I think there's an interesting thing to talk about though with creature design in the film industry in general. A lot of people believe it has not been good for years. Period. That's Star Wars. That's even things like Guillermo del Toro movies where it hasn't been what it used to be back in like the Stan Winston days.
Right.
You know, like name something better than the Xenomorph.
Right.
You still can't. It's maybe the greatest monster ever put to screen. Now Guillermo del Toro has the Fawn, which is a brilliantly designed creature. He's got the Pale Man. But if you look at Star Wars in the recent the recent run of those movies, nothing feels overly inspired from a creature design level.
Yeah, nothing jumps to mind based on what you're saying.
And that's the thing is it's tough, right? So it's like Avatar didn't necessarily have the greatest creature design, but has anything gone above and beyond in the last 15 years?
I'm sure there are.
I'm sure if we dig deep enough, right? But that's the thing is you have to dig deep.
I don't even know if that's true. I just can't pull anything off the top.
But that's what I'm saying. I was talking to a friend the other day about it,
yeah.
And he just mentioned he was like, "Yeah, like there hasn't been a new Xenomorph." You know what I mean?
And I'm not even saying there has to be a Xenomorph.
No.
That's not what I'm saying with this. But like, you could do a little bit more than just make it blue. The world design could be slightly different than just a rainforest. I mean, it's like there's that like common complaint about like Star Wars movies where it's like, okay, the entire planet's a desert planet, the entire planet's a forest, the entire planet is an ice planet, where it's just like it's just like and I think that works for Star Wars. I think that's kind of a separate thing, but it's just like so much of it is like there is a 1-to-1 like barely change, like add a couple legs and change the color and it is just the same animal. I'm like, you could have done a little, like you can find more inspired than that in the past 15 years.
Of course. I'm just saying across the board, that's been a complaint I've heard more than once, right? Is that design things like that are hurting. And I think a part of that is CGI, right? It's just easy to build something in a computer. You know what I mean? And so there's less like love and craft at times. That being said, I do think like ILM takes so much pride. I've heard people from ILM talk about the creature designs, like A Quiet Place, right? Like the earshot in that movie came very late in the game, and they told Krasinski, the director of that movie, they just told him, they're like, no, we want to do it. You're going to make our guy cooler, right? And so there is that mentality when you go to certain things. But another thing about Cameron that happened with Avatar, there's a whole long story that I won't pretend to know about completely about the music in this movie. But if you were to describe the music, it's pretty standard, right? Like, it's good. It's not bad.
I literally can't even remember what it sounded like.
But see, there you go.
And I saw this.
The original intention of the music was to try as hard as you can to make it completely otherworldly.
Yeah.
So the composer, I can't remember who it was, or if that guy even ended up doing it, started working on using these like hyper obscure instruments and blending things and tried to create this like sound we've never heard before. Going down that road, and Cameron kept coming back going, well, no, I want it to be more like, what do you think of like victorious, like brass and like, and so he just kept getting in the way of making original music too. That's what frustrates me, because I would have loved to heard the other version. But look, I think it's clear that we don't think this movie is all that original.
Yeah.
Because it's not. But let's talk about it just as purely as an experience. You know, you turn your brain off, you enjoy a story.
Yeah.
It works.
Right.
I hate to do that. I hate to be like, you got to turn your brain off. No, screw that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But with this particular one, if I'm not going to get mad at the fact that it's not original, can I enjoy it? So I'm not mad it's not original. I'm over that. We've discussed that. I really enjoy this movie.
In the theater, I enjoyed it. Like, I had a good time. Like, look, I think if I put it on my TV, like, today, do I think I would enjoy it? I don't know.
I think you might have fun with it, but I don't think it's an immersive experience to watch this movie at home.
No, and I think you need that.
I
think that is absolutely necessary.
Because we talked about Dune and how like you had mentioned this movie more than any movie ever has to be seen in a theater, or feels like it does. Yeah. I was worried about that with Dune, where I was telling everyone, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait." And I was like, "No.
Yeah, no.
Go see this in IMAX.
Screen. Yeah.
Like, it's the craziest thing you've ever seen."
Yeah.
And then I watched it at home and was like, "Oh, it plays. It's still great. Dune is still awesome at home."
Yeah.
So that aside, I don't think and there's something to be said about that. I appreciate a director who made a movie with the intention of people watching it in theaters, but it hurts the longevity. Clearly not culturally, because the re-release has made a ton of money.
I can't. I feel like, well, honestly, you know what I think part of it is? I think one of the things that is making this movie so popular is the fact that
specifically the re-release
are people my age. I'm 27, so this movie came out like 13 years ago. So I was 14 when this movie came out. So I think a lot. I was a teenager. A lot of people around my age went and saw this and were super excited about it. And then that past 13 years, some interest dwindled, but people had kids in that time period. So I think what could be happening and making this re-release so popular is people taking their kids. Like, literally in our screening, there was a woman probably about my age brought her very young daughter
and then left 30 minutes in.
Left like 30 minutes in, but she brought her very young daughter, and I think that's probably a common thing of like, oh, this was like such a huge like cultural touchstone. That I want my children to also experience the same thing that I did when I was young.
I definitely think you're right. Like, I think that's a huge part of what's bringing people out to see it again. But there's the other side of that where people are still enjoying it.
Right.
There's not this like coming back and be like, guys, we were wrong about Avatar.
Right.
People are still really into it. And I think a big part of that is this idea of like, one, great visuals in terms of computer generated effects.
Yeah.
Still hold up very well.
Yeah, incredibly well.
And we're in an era where CGI feels like it's getting worse.
Right.
Because of overdemand and the fact that it's not unionized.
And crunch and all that kind of,
all of that stuff. So I think that's part of it. I love the MCU. I love Marvel. I'm super into it. But with the exception of a few things, a Shang-Chi, a Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's VFX are also rough. But that movie's really ultimately very entertaining and very, very fun and emotional. Yeah. The problem is we're watching something, and I don't want to drag She-Hulk because my opinions on that are weird and varied, and I think it's a mixed bag. But the CGI, not good.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that does not work in that show.
That being said, it's also a TV show.
It's also a TV show. Well, look at something like Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
It looks bad. Just straight up, no two ways about it, looks bad.
Yeah.
So and on top of that, they also at times Marvel movies feel like they're directed in a computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They feel like all the decisions are made from what's the easiest thing to do? What's the way we can make it look like every other one so everyone has a cheat sheet on what they're allowed to do? I think that is something that is a big reason why the Avatar re-release is doing so well and people are still enjoying it because they're watching just like a movie, like a movie, like a real film,
like a movie on the big screen.
Harry Styles, pour one out. He's still alive.
Pour one out for his acting career.
Yeah, hurtful.
No. I mean, he literally. So in this moment in time, literally yesterday or the day before, he got recast in Nosferatu.
In Robert Eggers'
Nosferatu.
Anyway, I think people are coming in, seeing a movie directed with intention, and everything that is being put on screen is being done really well from a directing and from like an action filmmaking standpoint. And I think that's why it feels refreshing to see a movie like this. Cause like we get whatever we want to say, The Batman did incredibly well. I love that movie dearly.
Yeah.
It feels like a once in a blue moon thing. Like Avatar feels more akin to something like, and this is not me comparing the two. I want to make that clear. I think one of these movies is much better than the other. Mad Max Fury Road. This like crazy, ginormous epic of a movie that is like directed with intention and what it's doing incredibly well. That's the difference, right? It's like a Mad Max Fury Road comes out, feels like once in a generation. Right. Avatar is more akin to something like that for what we're talking about directing and experience of watching it in a theater.
I think a simple way of putting it is nothing about it feels half-assed or rushed.
Agreed. That's exactly.
I think that is the simplest way to put it, where it's like you can watch a movie, watch a new MCU movie, and so much of the VFX, so much of the visuals feel a little half-assed or feel a little rushed. I read, it was right after Black Panther came out, I read an article talking about like, why is CGI getting worse? Because that movie's amazing, but the CGI in Black Panther sucks.
And specifically the third act too, where there's the most CGI, so no time to do it.
Right. And so it was a really interesting article. I think it was on Forbes. I could very easily be wrong. Really worth reading. And it's just talking about how like the attitude around, like this, like it went from being this important thing that people put a lot of time and effort to make look good to a thing like, oh, every movie's got it, so now we'll just rush through it, and like the intention changed, and the focus changed. It's like there's so much more of it now that nobody has enough time to do it right. And Avatar feels like a movie that took the time to do it right. I think another parallel that we could make is like the original Lord of the Rings series. I think so much of the CG in that movie still sells incredibly well, like 20 years later.
Well,
and then you watch The Hobbit, and those movies look kind of shitty by comparison because so much of it was rushed. And so like a movie like Avatar, I completely agree, feels refreshing. Even 2009 Avatar feels refreshing in 2022 because it doesn't feel like anything about it was rushed.
When you want to talk about other than we're talking about Marvel, let's talk about DC.
Yeah.
You know what? DC's been on a run lately.
Yeah.
I think Shazam rules. It's got some CGI problems, but the budget's lower, so I'm more forgiving. Look at the Suicide Squad. Also lower budget because it's rated R. That movie rules. The CGI never pulls you out. There are times it doesn't completely work, but it never is pulling you out of the movie. The Batman is like essentially just seamless. It's again, same guy who shot Dune, Greg Fraser. That man rules so hard. He's on the bleeding edge of the technology with the volume.
Yeah.
He's the only guy who knows how to use it correctly.
Amen.
And so you look at the Batman and it's like, it feels directed with intention. You never quite fully know what CGI and what isn't because so much of what you're seeing is a practical element enhanced with CGI.
Right.
Not just a actor standing on a green screen going, look at you, Mr. Korg, or you know what I mean? So there's still movies like this that work. The Batman, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Top Gun Maverick is a movie that like the only CGI stuff in that movie is to enhance the literal real thing.
Right.
Is the missile flying at the plane that's real. You know,
Right.
that's obviously not, you know?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's like you still get these,
Yeah.
but not enough where Avatar being re-released and making like $30 more million.
Right.
It feels refreshing.
Yeah.
And now a whole new generation is going to grow up with it too, which is only going to make it more refreshing.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Go for it.
What are your feelings on 3D? I want to talk about this just for a second.
Oh, I do not like 3D. I think it dulls color.
Yeah.
I think it is not a cool enough effect. Like we talked about this a little bit after. I think Avatar's 3D is quite fun. There are moments where I'm really like, ooh, feeling it.
Yeah.
But 90%, 95 to 97% of the movie, I'm just watching a movie with glasses on and my head kind of hurts because like...
Yeah, I the first 3D movie I ever saw in a theater was The Great Gatsby. It's an incredibly weird movie to see in 3D.
The dumbest movie to see in 3D.
Because it's the dumbest movie to make 3D. And I was struck by the fact that the 3D, the depth works for me for about 45 seconds. And then it completely shifts back to
it just feels like watching a movie, but with less color because
Yes.
you're looking through tinted glass.
And so one thing I noticed when watching Avatar, which again, like I everything we've said is true, is like after 45 seconds, I don't feel the depth anymore. In certain scenes, you really feel it. And there's two really interesting notes that I took away from this. Is one, depth of field is it really important in these. So there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie where Jake Sully's in the foreground and there's somebody in the background talking to him. It's right at the beginning where he's like, he sees his brother in the box. Oh, spoilers for Avatar, by the way. Have
we not spoiled any movie we've talked about?
Spoilers for a movie from 13 years ago that everybody's seen. So he's sitting in the front, his brother's in the box, and then there's a dude in the background talking to him about like, oh, you could go to Avatar and you can get your legs back, blah, 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 blah. And one thing I was like noticing... I
remember that line, blah, 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 blah. It was a great line, frankly.
It's really weird that they have that in there, but it worked.
Weird choice, totally works.
The thing that I think is weird, though, is the focus, the actual like lens focus is on Jake Sully, and the guy in the background's out of focus. But as a human, my eyes are darting between these two men's faces. The man who's speaking and the man who he's speaking to. And it is incredibly, like, disorienting is kind of the wrong word because I think that's too strong of a way to put it. But it is strange that my eyes, as my focus shifts from one person to another, the focus shifts with it. But when you're watching this movie where he is out of focus, it almost makes it look like I'm not wearing my glasses.
Well, on top of that, my brother texted me. He went and saw it. He hates 3D like I do. The depth of field feels wrong. So if there's a character in the background that's supposed to be out of focus, it almost feels glitched more than it feels like a depth of field choice.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. But I think it's just like important to note that like it feels broken more than it feels like a decision.
It's like when the depth of field is incredibly wide and everything in the shot, or basically everything in the shot except for maybe things distantly in the background, are a little out of focus. If almost everything in the shot is in focus, then it works like a charm. Mm-hmm. Then it doesn't. I don't notice it. But in that shot in particular, because he's quite out of focus in the background and Jake Sully's in sharp focus in the foreground, but I'm not looking at only Jake. I'm looking at the man who's speaking, and so I think it's a really weird. Like I don't think like that feels like a mistake. Like it doesn't feel like that the filmmaker that James Cameron fully thought out the repercussions of only having this man out of focus, even though he's the one talking. Because like when I'm looking at him, my eyes are like it's tricking my eyes into thinking that Jake Sully is closer to me. But like, why is Jake Sully in focus, but that guy isn't when I'm focused on him? It's an incredibly weird, disorienting.
It happens a lot in this movie. So like 3D, I think it's wacky. I think it is a gimmick, and I think the industry knows it's a gimmick, but James Cameron doesn't.
Right.
That being said, Avatar's the best 3D movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think
like that problem aside, most of the time it works fine.
Right. I was talking to a friend of mine literally last night. We went and saw Barbarian. I was talking to a friend of mine literally last night about the 3D in this movie. And he said, like, so he went and saw it in theaters at the time. And he said it was the first time he like actually recognized why 3D was kind of interesting and why it felt different in Avatar. And this is how he described it, where it was like for movies before Avatar that were doing 3D, it was very much about like the subject reaching out at you, at like popping out of the screen. But for Avatar, it's about the depth.
Yes.
It's about how deep it feels. And I think that is an incredibly interesting way of looking at it, because I think the beginning of this movie, the first like 15 minutes of this movie are very much like, whoa, like sticking its hand out at you and like spraying water.
Yeah,
and
but
like,
then after that, it's just like occasionally a character will turn a spear. We'll see. But the majority of it is immersive instead of the gimmick side of it.
Like once you're actually like boots on the ground on Pandora, you feel the depth of it. When you do feel it. That being said, it's kind of rare because like you said, after 45 seconds it disappears for me.
No, I totally agree with that, and it's again one of those things. It's just really a gimmick.
Yeah,
I mean that's why most movies aren't shot for 3D. They're shot and then in post they do whatever effects they do to create a 3D like thing. Which is again why Avatar is better, because Avatar is very much shot for 3D. I'll be very interested to know what the new one looks like in 3D.
Yeah,
but that being said, I'll see the new one if I can get into an IMAX screening of the new one without 3D. That's how I'll see it first, because I don't like 3D. It gets in the way of my experience because it gets in the way of the color. I'm constantly aware of the glasses.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for audio listeners. One bit. I'm constantly aware of the 3D glasses that are on my face while I'm watching it.
And he looks so good and cool.
Thanks, bro.
And they don't do anything to ruin the color or the contrast at all.
Well, we looked up a scene after we saw it because I own the Blu-ray, so we put the Blu-ray in and instantly went, the color's so much better.
Yeah.
It's so 3D is a gimmick. I don't like it, but when it's done with intention, I think it can have an interesting effect.
Yeah.
You're right. You get used to it, and it's a 2 hour and 40-minute movie. Right. It's like, it's not going to work the whole time, but there's going to be moments where you're like, oh, that's really cool.
And another thing I was struck by this time was like the performance capture. Like
in a post Planet of the Apes world, the Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes specifically, I noticed that way more.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? I'm curious.
There were performance captures movies before this and after this that just the mapping going from a human face to a non-human face had like, there are movies that do it incredibly well. Like you mentioned, the Planet of the Apes movies look phenomenal and are so good at that. I was just struck by just how detailed the performance capture was. And I'm sure a lot of that is incredible animators doing things to bridge those gaps as well. That being said, like, I think that is the technology I was struck by this time. Not the detail of the CG, but the detail of the performance capture.
Great point.
I think that was something that I was struck by this time.
Well, and while we're doing this, I want to just rattle off a couple of quick things that I really do like about this movie. Outright, no caveats. Zoe Saldana is so good in this movie. She is
queen of the $1 billion movie.
Legitimately, and a sci-fi queen. She's in Star Trek. She's in Guardians of the Galaxy. She rules. I love Zoe Saldana, but I think she's really good in this movie.
Yeah,
because we never get this moment of her being like a human. To us, she is only an alien, which can be hard to empathize for certain people.
Yeah,
she totally blasts through that. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I think Stephen Lang, the guy who plays the villain, is great. He's having the time of his life,
chewing up the scenery. In the best
he
way.
Is energy incarnate as this guy. I love this idea of, Dances with Wolves and Pocahontas is about forgoing certain things about society and in tuning yourself with nature and the people around you.
Yeah.
I like this idea, again, the idea of literizing that, right? Where this planet is connective energy, literally.
Yeah.
Like they describe the scientific explanation for their God is that they have these things and they connect to things around them and other creatures. It's like this collective memory data bank.
Yeah.
But to them, it's their ancestors. It's collective memory and energy and being entirely in tune. Like this thing with the dragons that they bond with for life.
Yeah.
They bond with on like a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Like there's a moment when she's riding the panther thing at the end and it gets hurt and she screams.
Yeah.
Because she can feel it on an emotional empathetic. I love that principle and that idea.
Yeah.
Like you said, the performance capture, great. I think this movie does have some great emotional moments. When Home Tree's being destroyed, I feel that. I definitely feel that. When she's like, if you're one of us, help us. And she cuts him free. I think there's tons of moments throughout this movie that top to bottom, no caveats, work.
Yeah.
I have softened on this. I like it. But the big question, I think, are you excited about Avatar: The Way of Water?
For years, I was like, I didn't even like Avatar. Why is he making 5 more or however many? Who cares? And God damn it, if I'm not a little freaking excited. I hate it.
It's that scene after the movie. They play a scene with like no story whatsoever. You're just watching the new water simulation and like characters interacting. You're like, damn, this looks real fun and cool. Like,
I'm hopefully we can do a little bit more interesting with these characters. I'll add that
Avatar was just written by Cameron.
Right.
The new one, I believe, has another writer.
Yeah,
so I'm hoping that's the thing that makes it turn that corner of quality.
Push it a little further.
Because who knows what they're going to do? Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be what it is. But like, I'm really excited. Which I have not thought until I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm really excited. And then seeing the re-release again, I was like, okay, I want to go back to Pandora and hang out for a little bit. I
never in a million years thought I'd be interested or excited. And I'm freaking excited. Sorry.
Yeah, dude.
Sorry to myself, to my inner douche filmmaker, to my movie snob insides. I'm a little excited.
Okay, that's the good thing though, because who knows? If we see it, we like it, maybe we'll do an episode on it. That was yet to be seen.
Yeah.
Because if we don't like it, we're trying not to be too negative. I just think Avatar's an interesting case to talk about. You have a question?
Completely random question. Like, this is off topic. Okay. So there was something that I noticed that bothered me a little bit. Like, look, this is like a more of like a personal quandary, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So every time they say "I see you," which is like an important thing within the Na'vi culture.
It's like, I see you. There's a scene where they explain what they mean.
But every time Jake Sully says it, he says it in English. At the very last, so it's very at the end of the movie, she has him in her arms, and he's like in his human form, in his supplicant form, and we, he says "I see you," and she says "I see you." Do you think it would make more sense? Because they say it in English. If you ask me, it would make way more sense if he said it in Na'vi.
Here's my opinion on this. And this is, again, what we talk about. Sometimes do another pass on the script. I think it would have been very, very powerful if she said it in English and he said it in Na'vi.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about.
Again, that's that thing where, like, occasionally a director doesn't understand that the scene needs more emotion. Because the scene works. Don't get me wrong.
No, the scene
it's
totally
effective.
works.
It works. It could go deeper. That's an instance where it's like, okay, let's really think about what they're saying. And because you're right. The line is throughout the movie. There's a scene where they explain what they mean by that. Yeah. The difference of like, I see you literally, and I see into you. I see your spirit.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that like he is not like he's in his human form.
Exactly. And she's alien seeing his body for the first time. Yeah. His real body for the first time.
And so she, says it in English to him, but he responds like he is Na'vi now. Mm-hmm. Yes, you see his human form, but he is Na'vi now.
That would have been super powerful. Yeah. I'd have loved that.
And so I've thought about that kind of idea recently. And so watching that movie, I was like, damn it, he should have said it in Na'vi. Like,
he should have. Yep.
He should have said it in Na'vi.
It's just one of those moments that if you take a step back and think about what is happening in the scene, what is really going on, that answer would come to you super quickly, right? Because I didn't even think about that. And as soon as you said that, I went, oh, she should have said it. And immediately it came to me.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great thing.
Just something random that I noticed.
And again, it's a story thing, right? Yeah. Which is what this movie's problem is, a story.
Yeah, very, very true.
Okay. We've talked a lot about this movie. We have a bunch of feelings and stuff. I think see it. Yeah. Absolutely see it. And if for some reason they re-release it around when this comes out.
I'm sure it'll get 6 more re-releases because James Cameron cannot handle the idea that this is not the #1 movie of all time.
Yes, correct. Check this movie out. Try desperately to find it in a theater. Yeah. Like, that's the way to watch it. That's how to get swept up in it.
And if you can do IMAX, do IMAX.
Do IMAX, absolutely. And both of us are excited, which this movie won us over seeing it in the theater. Because I was excited from a like, oh, I want to see the CGI in action. But not from a like full-blown, I'm excited for the movie. Now I'm just excited for the movie. But that being said, we've talked about this a bunch. On to a B segment of sorts. Yeah. I don't know what you have prepared.
I have some, I don't have anything specifically Avatar related. I just have some good old fashioned movie trivia. And we're just going to have some fun with a little bit of movie.
We're just going to do it.
Movie trivia.
I've seen every movie, so I'm going to either do great or terrible.
Okay, we're starting off easy. What are the dying words of Charles Foster Kane in Citizen Kane?
Rosebud.
And who? My favorite thing about like the freaking Rosebud thing is everybody's like, nobody was in the room. How did they know that was his last words? People were in the room. Shut up. You think
they literally cut a shot where you see someone hear him say it,
literally,
which is the funny part. Who cares?
Who played Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate?
I haven't seen The Graduate.
Oh, yeah. I actually think it's on the list. I'm pretty sure I put it on the list.
I was supposed to watch it for a film class. I got like 15 minutes in, got interrupted by something, and the next day went to class like, I'm changing it. There's too much swearing. I was in film school as an adult, and he changed it to something that I don't remember.
That's hilarious.
Which blows, and I just haven't gone back to rewatch it. I really want to see it.
It's on the list. We're doing it.
Who is it?
We'll do an episode about it. Anne Bancroft.
Okay.
Classic. What was the first feature-length animated movie ever released?
Snow White?
Yes.
Yes.
In The Matrix, does Neo take the blue pill or the red pill?
I hate this because this is the exact type of memory problem I have. It's the red pill?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes.
For what movie did Tom Hanks score his first Academy Award nomination?
Oh, nomination. That is tough. Okay, I definitely don't know this, but it's got to be before...
Wild guess.
Could he... Did he also win? Because he's
don't actually know.
He's won 800 of these.
I don't think so. I'm nearly positive he didn't. I'm positive he didn't.
Wild guess. So it can't be Forrest Gump, can't be Philadelphia.
It's pre those movies.
Yeah, because he won both of those. Oh, what was he in before that? Oh, no. I don't know it.
It's a very popular performance of his.
Castaway came out after those.
Yeah.
Definitely came out after Philadelphia.
It's a pretty large performance.
What is it? I don't know.
Big. I was trying to give you a credit.
He got nominated for Big. Dude,
Big.
that's so cool. He's so good in Big.
What 1927 musical was the first talkie?
The Jazz Singer.
The Jazz Singer.
An incredibly racist film.
Well, we're not going to get into that. What's the name of the skyscraper in Die Hard?
Nakatomi Plaza.
Nakatomi Plaza. What flavor of Pop-Tarts does Buddy the Elf use in his spaghetti in Elf? This is a great question. I actually love this one.
Is it the strawberry?
No.
Oh, what is it?
I'll give you another guess.
It's
a super basic
the
flavor.
gross one is chocolate. Is it chocolate?
It's chocolate.
Okay, yeah.
There you go. What shocking Wes Craven horror movie carried the marketing tagline, "To avoid fainting, keep repeating, it's only a movie"?
The Fly?
No. That's not Wes Craven, is it?
Oh, you said Wes Craven.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Wes Craven.
for some reason my brain was like David Cronenberg.
I don't know why. Yeah,
well, what I heard is like to avoid fainting, and I went, okay, David Cronenberg makes those kind of movies.
Yeah.
Wes Craven.
Wes Craven, to avoid fainting, keep repeating, it's only a movie.
A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Nope.
Oh, what is it?
The Last House on the Left.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
I don't even know. What pop vocal group performs at the wedding in Bridesmaids? That one's a tough one.
I don't know.
Wilson Phillips.
All right.
What real life, on again, off again Hollywood power couple starred in the film Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I don't know. I haven't seen that movie.
Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
There it is. I love at the beginning of this, I was like, I've seen every movie and I don't know.
So many of these are really hard, and then this one is stupid easy. What American writer-director starred in several iconic European-produced spaghetti westerns?
I wonder who it could be. I feel like he's got no name and was in a movie series. That's Clint Eastwood.
It's Clint Eastwood. Who played juror number 8 in 12 Angry Men? You haven't seen this one.
I've seen you and I watched 12 Angry Men together. How dare you?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Is our friendship not enough to you to remember that?
You're asking the person with
we did that and then drove 21 hours across multiple states the next day.
Oh, does that when we watched that?
When we watched it. Talked a lot about it.
I forgot.
I don't know his name. I don't know his name.
Henry Fonda. Let's do two more. We'll do two more.
Okay.
The head of what kind of animal is front and center in the infamous scene from The Godfather?
So I've seen The Godfather.
Do you actually not know?
I actually don't know. Oh, a horse.
Yeah.
Is it a horse? Sorry. Yeah, that's okay. I apologize for that.
What TV show was Jack Nicholson referencing when he ad-libbed, "Here's Johnny" in The Shining? You are such a Gen Zer. I cannot believe you.
So what is it?
The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson.
Okay, couple things. Conan is the only late night guy I ever was into.
Yeah.
Anyway,
liked Jimmy Kimmel for a while, right?
I was into some Jimmy Kimmel bits, but through YouTube. Like I was never like into Kimmel.
Right.
Anyway, okay. That was a fun one. I enjoyed that.
That was a good one. There are literally, I found a list of 125, so we can pull from that list again.
Rad. Okay. Recommendations up front. Avatar, if you can find it in a theater, definitely see it in a theater.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to watch this movie. Other recommendation for me, just for funsies, also Avatar, but this time, The Last Airbender. Not the movie, the animated TV series.
No, Avatar, or no, it's just literally The Last Airbender.
I'll stab you. I
Just
really
watch
will.
It. It's so good.
I will stab you.
Okay, fun thing. I actually met the kid who played Ong in that movie.
I've heard he's nice. I've actually heard this not from you, but from another person we both know.
A very nice guy.
Yeah.
A very
Did
nice
Taekwondo
guy.
or something
Did
like
Taekwondo.
that? Yeah.
I did Taekwondo growing up. He was really good. I mean, obviously, that's why he got cast.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
because they were willing to whitewash that movie for him.
Yeah. Well, what movie would Hollywood not whitewash anybody for? You know what I mean?
That's true. Anyway, that's fun. But check out the animated series. Don't watch the movie. The movie blows. But that animated series was formative for me. I adore it. For many people of my generation and many generations surrounding mine.
Yeah.
It's excellent. Check that out. That'll be my recommendation. Just because it's fun that they're both called Avatar and one of them is much better than the other.
What to recommend? You know what? I'm just gonna go with another James Cameron classic. I think, like, if you haven't seen Terminator 2, what are you doing with your life?
What are you doing watching/listening to this podcast?
What are you doing with your life?
Just go watch Terminator 2.
Go watch T2. It's the best movie he's ever made. Do you agree with that? That's his best movie ever made?
Yes.
I don't know because look, I'm not a big Titanic guy. I think the ship and stuff, all that stuff is amazing, but I don't think the movie's that great.
No, T2 is the cool. T2 is
the best.
Arguably the greatest action film ever made. It's definitely in the discussion.
In the discussion for sure.
Check out T2.
Check out T2. Watch another.
Watch both Terminator movies, frankly. I think both rule. And they're both very different.
Very different.
One of them's way more of like a thriller, slasher monster movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the other one is way more of an action movie. Both rule, both super cool. Check out both of those.
I actually, you know what movie other James Cameron movie I actually like, and I feel like nobody ever talks about? The Abyss. I actually like that movie.
No, I'm not the biggest fan of The Abyss, but I get it.
Yeah. I think that movie is really interesting and really weird, and I like it quite a bit.
Well, would you look at that? Avatar warmed two cold hearts on this go around.
Who'd have thought?
Amazingly. So, you got a list of stuff to check out. So check it out. Or don't. I don't know. Live your life.